Welcome back, all my fight fans, and holy, what a way to kick off the year. UFC 311 absolutely delivered. One of the best cards I've ever seen in my life. I mean, everything from the Intuit Dome and how gorgeous and stunning that looked, to multiple fight of the nights, multiple hype trains derailed, and some dominant performances. It was an amazing way to kick off the year, and I can't wait to break it all down for you guys today. As always, I'll be going through every single fight of the night, so if you guys want to skip to the main card or the main events, I'll have timestamps down in the description for you guys. If you guys like this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends. It helps boost this channel and the algorithm. And with that all out of the way, let's get into the early prelims. Kicking us off with the first fight of the night, we had a flyweight bout between Tagir Ulanbekov and Clayton Carpenter. This was a phenomenal fight to kick off the pay-per-view, the first pay-per-view of the year. Every single year, the UFC says that they're going to come and do bigger things than last year, and I almost don't believe them because how can you top last year? But they keep doing it, man. The fight nights that they've announced this year so far, I mean, you got Israel Adesanya on a fight night, you got Henry Cejudo on a fight night, Jan Blachowicz, super stacked fight night so far, and this card was super stacked. To kick it off with Tagir is crazy. Like, this guy could be, you know, headlining the regular prelims. He's such a talented fighter, and this was the first fight of the night that Khabib was coaching in, and he wouldn't come back till later in the night, but luckily, they got the win out. Tagir got it done by unanimous decision. It was a kind of a close fight. Clayton Carpenter had his moments. He definitely made it close at times, but Tagir being 5'7", 5'8" at 125, it's such a big height advantage that he just dominated most of the fight, and I can't wait to see what he does at 125. I think he's going to do some big things there. Next up, we have a bantamweight bout between Ricky Turcios, I never say his name right, and Benardo Sopaj. And I picked Sopaj to win in this one. I'm not super familiar on either of them, but I've seen Sopaj fight a couple times, and he's pretty aggressive, and he came out flying in this one. It was a really close fight. I was watching it a little bit less because I was going from my place to my cousin's place where I watched the rest of the fights. So I was watching it in the car, and I wasn't paying as much attention, but still a great fight. And yeah, moving on to the next bantamweight fight, we had Rinya Nakamura, who was 9-0 coming into this one, versus Muin Gafurov. I'm going to butcher some names today, I promise, but I apologize. But Gafurov did a fantastic job in this fight, upsetting a big prospect, somebody who had a lot of hype behind him in Nakamura. That guy was a wrestler who we thought was going to do big things at bantamweight, but he got derailed, and he's not the only 9-0 fighter who got derailed last night. But yeah, it was a really good fight, back and forth. I don't think you could have called it for Nakamura. I think Gafurov definitely won, but it was a close fight. And yeah, fantastic performance by Gafurov. Moving on, we had a women's bantamweight fight between Karol Rosa and Ailin Perez. And we all wanted Perez to win because, well, the way she dances at the end of fights. Yeah, awesome performance by her. You know, she does what she does. She takes people down and she just kind of rides them. So yeah, great performance by her. Third round decision. Can't wait to see what she does at bantamweight. And yeah, let's move on to the regular prelims. So we had a couple cancellations in the regular prelims. The Johnny Walker Guskov fight fell out, and the Zachary Reese Dumas fight fell out. So I picked, I think, Zachary Reese and Guskov to win in those. Luckily, they found new opponents, so my predictions are a little bit invalid there. But the first fight in the early prelims was actually a lightweight bout between Grant Dawson and Diego Ferreira. And Grant Dawson is a super hot prospect at 155 right now. I think he's going to do big things. He's, I think, 23 and 2, and I think he's finished 18 of those fights. I think 13 by submission, if I got my numbers right there. But he's going to be something at lightweight. So I can't wait to see what he does next. This was a great fight against a very tough guy in Diego Ferreira. I knew this fight was going to be back and forth. I predicted to be fight of the night. Wasn't quite that. There were some amazing fights on the main card. But yeah, fantastic performance by Grant Dawson. Hopefully he gets another big name after this, somebody maybe in the top 15. And then we had a light heavyweight bout between Bogdan Guskov and, stepping in on short notice, Billy Elekana. And this guy did a pretty good job. I mean, in the first round, you could probably give it to Billy. He took Guskov down, I believe, and he kind of dominated that first round. He had some good moments. Guskov came back in the second, found some homes for his hands, and he got a submission in the second round, which was a fantastic performance by him. He keeps his I think 100% finish rate alive, which is awesome to see. I love guys who have high finish rates like that. So hopefully he can keep winning and do big things at light heavyweight. He seems like a pretty fun guy to watch. So awesome performance by Guskov. Then we had a middleweight bout between Zachary Reese and stepping in last minute, Azamat Bekoev. And man, if I knew this guy was stepping in, I would have switched my pick from Zach Reese. This guy got it done quickly. I mean, 3 minutes into the first round, he got a vicious TKO and absolutely put out Zachary Reese. That guy was out. Like, I think they had to almost stretcher him off. He was not feeling good after that knockout. So Zachary Reese was kind of not a huge prospect, but he had some hype behind him. I think he was like 8-1 coming into this, and yeah, got absolutely flatlined in the first round by a very scary fighter in Bekoev, who has, I think, 9 first-round finishes, and he's 13-9. So keep an eye on that guy at middleweight. He could be pretty fun. And then the main fight for the prelims was Payton Talbott versus Raoni Barcelos. Now, going into this, I saw Barcelos as kind of a 37-year-old old jiu-jitsu fighter. I didn't really see him winning this fight, especially after Umar knocked him out in the first round. I'm like, I think Talbott's got enough power in his hands. He's going to get this done in the first round. So I was telling everybody that I was watching the fights with, I'm like, if you're going to put money on a fight, it's going to be Talbott first round KO. He's a minus 1,000 favorite. I don't see this going any other way. Now, unfortunately, I was dead wrong about that. The old man strength prevailed, and Raoni showed what veteran quality can get you in the UFC, and he absolutely manhandled Talbott for the 3 rounds. I can maybe give Talbott the second round, but I think Barcelos won all 3 rounds. He put on a fantastic performance. Like I said, showing why you don't mess with the old bull. He did something there. He absolutely derailed this hype train because everybody was saying that this Talbott kid was going to be champ. He was going to knock everybody out in the first round. You know, he had like 7 knockouts or something like that. He was looking like a really hot prospect, but at 25, man, you still got some lessons to learn, and Raoni put it on him. That was an awesome performance. It sucks to see a guy lose his 0. That always sucks. We saw a couple 0s lost tonight. But yeah, Talbott, I'm sure he'll bounce back. I don't think his stock went down too much in that one. I think he'll bounce back and work on the ground game a little bit and get back to knocking people out. So let's move on to the main card. So as I'm sure a lot of you guys knew, Harman Sarukian dropped out of this fight last minute, and Renato Moicano, the G, stepped up. Beneil Dariush kind of got the short end of the stick there. He didn't get to fight, but Renato Moicano stepped up last minute. Absolute G for taking that fight. Stepped in against Islam Makhachev. We'll get to that fight in a second. First, we got to talk about the Kevin Holland fight. Kevin Holland versus Reinier de Ridder at middleweight. I was saying going into this fight, there's 2 ways it can go. It's either going to be Kevin Holland by knockout because we know he's got power in his hands, or the most likely scenario, what I predicted to happen, Reinier de Ridder first round submission. Going into this fight, some of the people I was watching with, who are a little bit newer to watching the UFC, were asking me, they're like, doesn't everybody in the UFC have a black belt? Because they're seeing like it pop up on the screen that this guy's a jiu-jitsu black belt, right? And I'm like, yeah, everybody in the UFC for the most part has a black belt. Not everybody does, but a lot of them do. But there's a difference between black belt and black belt. And you're going to see that in this fight. You're going to see the difference between a Kevin Holland black belt and a Reinier de Ridder black belt. And we saw that immediately. As soon as this fight went to the ground, which was pretty quickly, I told everybody in the room, I'm like, this fight's already over. Just watch what de Ridder does. He has almost like 10 first-round submissions in his career. I think he's got like 12 or 13 total, 14 maybe now. And it was over. He just methodically and calmly found his way to the next position, to the next position, to the next, and it's like Kevin Holland couldn't do anything. He just got suffocated. And then he found the choke, submitted Kevin Holland in the first round. Flawless performance. Literally couldn't have went any better for de Ridder. I said it in my prediction video. This guy's only lost to one human being. And that one human being is a triple weight world champion who I honestly think could probably come over to the UFC and mess up almost everybody at heavyweight. Anatoly Malikin is scary. He's like a version 2.0 of Fedor, and that guy is the only guy to beat de Ridder. So when that's your only loss, you can kind of push it to the side a little bit. De Ridder is an absolute phenom. He's 34 years old, so I want to see him get some big fights quickly. He spent a lot of time in other organizations, and I would love to see him fight somebody like Azamat Bekoev. I know Chimaev's on a streak right now. He's scarier. He's more violent, but on the ground, I'm just curious to see how it goes because de Ridder is so slick. He's so good at jiu-jitsu. I'm not willing to say that it's impossible for him to find a submission on Khamzat Chimaev. So that's a fight that I would want to see, but I think most people in the top 10, top 15, de Ridder is going to do this exact same thing too. If you put him in there with Sean Strickland, same thing's going to happen as what happened to Kevin Holland. This guy is so high level. Dreykus, I don't know. Dreykus is a Looney Tunes character, so we never know how he's going to win or lose. He seems to find ways to win out of his ass, but yeah, de Ridder, can't wait to see what he does at middleweight. Moving on to heavyweight, we had Jailton Almeida versus Serghei Spivac, and I predicted this fight to go for Almeida round 1, but I was picking submission, as I think all of us were, because Jailton Almeida is such a submission artist, and Spivac is not the greatest on the ground, but he had amazing takedown and submission defense in this fight. He was able to keep Almeida off of him in reverse positions. So very, very impressive. It wasn't actually until like the last 30, 20 seconds of the fight where Almeida found a combo and turned the fight around. It was looking like Spivac might have won that first round. And then, very fast, a little bit sloppy, compared to like Gane or Aspinall. Amazing combination landed. And he finished the fight there in the first round. So awesome first round performance for Almeida. He's a guy who I'm really hot on. I want to see him fight the top guys, everybody in the top 5. I really want to see him fight Aspinall, Gane, who he called out. But yeah, he's got to stay focused, man, because he gets caught with stuff and he gets things reversed on him that maybe he should have been able to keep that position. So I don't know. 22-3. His only loss in the UFC is, I think, to Curtis Blades. But as much as I'm like high on this guy, I'm also iffy. When he fights, I'm like, man, it looks like he's going to get knocked out every second. So I like Almeida. Hopefully he does big things at heavyweight. But yeah, we'll see how he does against those top 5 guys. Moving on, we had a light heavyweight bout between Jiří Procházka and Jamahal Hill. Going into this fight, I predicted Hill to win because it just seemed like what everybody was thinking. Like Hill has a little bit cleaner boxing. He's got quite a bit of power in his hands. And, Jiří keeps his hands down. And if these guys are going to stand up and have a striking battle, it's probably going to go Hill's way. Now, this fight was interesting because the first round, Jiří had a lot of success. Now, he was saying in the post-fight interviews that he was keeping his hands up, and he worked really hard on keeping his hands up. I don't know what Jiří's idea of keeping his hands up is. Maybe it's having his hands down here or up here instead of down here. But when you keep your hands up, you're supposed to have them like up to your cheeks. Like, I don't think he understands what keeping your hands up actually means. But regardless, he had a lot of success in the first round. He's very unorthodox, very herky-jerky, kind of like a cobra, hitting you with stuff and then pulling out of the way and duck into weird angles. Very, very hard to read. That guy would be an absolute puzzle to figure out. I mean, he has been for basically everybody he's fought in besides Pereira. And yeah, phenomenal performance by him. Like, great first round. The second round, though, Jamahal Hill was coming back. Jamahal Hill was starting to find his shots. You saw his fight IQ start to kick in. He started to find his zone a little bit. And he was finding these body shots on Jiří that I thought were going to start adding up. And in the third round, he was still finding them. And I'm like, if this was a 5-round fight, Jamahal Hill might pull this out of the fire and win it. As soon as I said that in the third round, Jiří gets the knockout. So it was an ill-timed comment, but yeah, it was a back and forth fight. Like, I thought Hill won the second round, I thought Jiří won the first, and I thought the third round was kind of up for grabs until the finish. I thought Hill was just a little bit slow to start. He was never going first. He was kind of countering. And you don't really want to counter against Jiří. You want to put him on the back foot. You want to pressure him because he's so good at counter striking. If you sit there in the pocket and play the game of pop and pull back and pop again, he's going to beat you at that, unless it's Alex Pereira, of course. But yeah, an absolutely fantastic performance by Jiří. I know he called for the third Alex Pereira fight. I'm sure we all want to see it because those fights are so fun, but they're so one-sided. Like, the first round is like kind of close, not really, and then the second round, Alex Pereira just finds his shots and just dummies this guy, and I think he's going to do it again. So I don't really see that fight being useful at light heavyweight, but who knows what happens. We got an announcement, I believe, right before that fight that Alex Pereira would be fighting Ankalaev for 311. And the co-main is Justin Gaethje versus Dan Hooker. a fight that I've been wanting for the last like 5-6 years. I've been wanting this fight forever because both of these guys have phenomenal chins and they both slug it out with no defense almost. These guys, you need to make this fight 10 rounds, UFC. I promise you guys, like, this fight needs to be 10 rounds. If there's a fight that should be switched to a 10-round fight, even 7 rounds, I'd accept that. But 10 rounds should be Justin Gaethje versus Hooker because neither one of those guys is going to go unconscious, I think. They're going to slug it out, and that's going to be one of the greatest fights of all time. So I'm extremely excited for that. I can't wait to break that fight down. But yeah, Pereira versus Ankalaev. Ankalaev might win that fight. I've been calling for him to fight Pereira for a long time now because I think he has the skills. I thought he beat John Blachowicz. I thought he should have had the belt in 2022. But, I'm happy he's getting his shot. Ankalaev is 32 years old. Pereira is almost 38. Ankalaev is very dynamic in his striking. He's got a lot of clean, vicious knockouts in the UFC so far. So I think he has the skills to do it, but I'm going to break that fight down, obviously, when I do my prediction videos for 313. But yeah, Jiří, we'll see what you do. Jamahal Hill, I don't know what's next for you. Maybe a fight with Roundtree. I'm not too sure. You guys can let me know down in the descriptions. Definitely play matchmaker. Tell me who you guys want to see Jiří and Hill fight next. But moving on, we had the co-main event between Merab Dvalishvili and Umar Nurmagomedov. Now, this was the fight that I was the most nervous for because I wasn't the biggest fan of Merab. Now, throughout fight week, watching some interviews and stuff, I've warmed up to him a little bit more. He is a fun guy. He's pretty funny and stuff, so I like Merab. I'm just not as big of a fan as him as I am with the Dagestani fighters. So obviously it sucked for me to watch Umar lose his 0, especially in the fashion that he did, kind of gassing out there in the last 2 rounds. He just seemed so labored, so fatigued. It was really sad to see because I've never seen that from Umar before, but let's start at the beginning of the fight. First 2 rounds, Umar Nurmagomedov had beautiful, crisp striking. His kicks were so fast. I'm surprised he didn't catch Merab with any of those head kicks. Merab just has terrific head movement. He's always moving his head. He's never stationary, Merab. He's always jumping around. Even my sister, who was watching the fights, is like, why is this guy always jumping around like a bunny? And I'm like, that's because he's hard to hit. But yeah, first 2 rounds, I thought Umar won both of those rounds pretty clearly. He edged it out with his superior striking, and he was the superior grappler for the most part in those first 2 rounds. I think he got the majority of the takedowns, and both of them were defending takedowns and getting takedowns brilliantly. I think the wrestling was pretty much dead even up until like the 4th and 5th round. But yeah, fantastic 2 rounds. The 3rd round was very close. I'm not going to sit here and say that I would have called it for Umar. I think Merab did enough to win that round, but it was a very close round. If there was like a pivot round, it would be round 3. I thought it was very, very close. I thought Merab was kind of just amping up his pace. Umar was starting to slow down a little bit, starting to go like, man, how am I not catching this guy? Like, I'm trying to take him down. He just gets right back up. I can't hit him on the feet. He's moving too much. Like, he's a difficult puzzle to figure out, and I think it was getting to Umar in the 3rd round. Then the 4th round, Merab kind of dominates. He starts to showboat a little bit. That obviously works for the judges. And yeah, I was in shock. In the 4th and 5th round, I was in shock because I'm watching Umar start to lose. And I was so high on Umar. I could see from his striking and in the highlights and the fights that I've watched from him that he might be the best striker at bantamweight. And his wrestling, I thought, was like on par with Merab. It showed to be on par with Merab in the first 2 rounds. But there's just something about Merab's stamina. There's something about the pressure, the cardio, the pace that he puts on people. It's just different. I've never seen it before. I've never seen this from GSP. I've never seen this from, Johnny Hendricks, Habib, Colby Covington. I'm trying to think of all the guys who put pace on people and have like crazy gas tanks. I've never seen any of those guys do what Merab does. I think Merab far and away has the best gas tank that we've ever seen in the UFC. I've never seen anybody be able to hard line, push the gas right to a 10 out of 10 and hold that for the whole fight. I've never seen that before. Like even Azamat Bekoev, who seems to turn it up to an 11 when he fights, he gasses out kind of quickly because you can't do that long. Like you can't do a Azamat Bekoev level of fighting for 5 rounds. It's like your body just can't handle it. But for Merab, it seems easy for him. Like in the 5th round, he wasn't even breathing heavy. He was jumping around. It seemed like he was just starting the fight. I don't understand it. I'm not going to sit here and say like, yo, he's on steroids or he's got some sort of secret method that he has and he's cheating. I don't think he's cheating at all. I think this guy just works harder than anybody. I think, being a construction worker and stuff, I think he's just got a different work ethic. And it was phenomenal to see. I have to tip my hat to Merab. Like, what a performance. I know Umar's going to be back. He's only 29 years old. This was pretty young to challenge for the belt, especially against such a high-level guy. So I know he'll be back. It was a close fight. I think he can win the rematch if he comes in with a little bit of a better game plan, maybe a little bit more prepared. But Umar's a guy who, at 135, standing at 5'8", being that jacked, I kind of always thought he should probably go up to 145. I mean, he's taller than Ilya, and he's almost more filled out than Ilya. So we'll see what Umar does with his career. I want to see him come back because he's really one of my favorite fighters in the UFC. I love Khabib. He's kind of like the wise Dagestani. He's very focused and driven. And then you have Islam, who's also very focused and driven, but he's kind of funny. He's got that funny bone to him. He's always cracking jokes, calling DC fat and stuff. And then Umar is like the nice one. You watch Umar in interviews, and he's such a sweetheart. You just want to be a fan of that guy. You watch the way he talks about his brother. You see the way he won't let anybody else mop the floors at AKA. He's like the mop guy. Like, just the way he treats his team and the people around him. I'm a really, really big fan of Umar, and I want him to get the belt one day. It was sad that he couldn't get it last night, but yeah, great fight. It was fight of the night for sure. I can't wait to see it ran back. But phenomenal performance by Merab. Like, what a performance. One of the greatest performances of the entire year, and I feel pretty confident in saying that, even though we're not even done January yet. So, yeah, we're going to be talking about that performance for a long time, I think. That was spectacular. Moving on to the main event, we had the lightweight bout between Islam Makhachev and Renato Moicano. Now, I couldn't help but feel like this was a lamb being offered up for slaughter. Going into this fight, I was telling everybody in the room, I'm like, it would be the biggest upset in UFC history if Renato Moicano, on a day's notice, came in and beat the pound-for-pound #1 fighter in the world in Islam Makhachev. This guy hasn't lost in 10 years, and like far and away, I think the best fighter in the world right now. I love Jon Jones, but how active Islam's been. He's finishing guys. I think he's finished like 9 out of 10 of his last fights or something like that. Islam Makhachev, man. I'm such a big fan of this guy. I think at this point, he's like at least on par with Khabib. I would almost edge him over Khabib at this point. Those are like my 2 favorite fighters under Jon Jones. I love those guys. The way they fight is gorgeous, and Islam is just so much more entertaining because he'll put the strikes on you. He can put the hands together. Khabib never figured out the hands, but Islam will put the hands on you, and then once he gets to the ground, man, he is deadly. And he's got one of the most beautiful Bravo Darce chokes I've ever seen in the history of the sport. I think it's probably #1 because the way he gets it by tacking onto his forearm instead of the crease in the elbow there, he can get so much more leverage if you grab onto the forearm. This is something that I didn't even realize until a couple years ago. And I was watching Islam fight, and I was watching the way he finishes his Darce chokes. And I'm like, I got to start trying that out because I think he's onto something there. And when you grab that on the forearm, the amount of torque you can get is insane. So as soon as he got that cinched on, grabbed his forearm, I'm like, it's over. It's over. And then everybody else in the room started to feel it too. They're like, oh, shoot, this fight's over already. This is a first-round submission for Islam. And that's exactly how I saw this going. First-round submission. I don't care how good Renato Moicano is on the ground. Nobody tests this guy's ground game. So, you can have a black belt, but once you get on the ground with a Dagestani wrestler, you're going to get challenged pretty quick. And we're going to see how real that black belt is. And yeah, I love Moicano. He's super funny. He's obviously a legitimate black belt, but yeah, there's just levels to this game. And on the ground, he had no business being down there. It was like a minnow in a shark's pond. Not even close. So Islam cut through him like butter. That's exactly how I expected that fight to go. I really, really want to see the Arman fight, man. I was so excited for that. I really like Arman. I know some people don't like his personality, but I like him. I think he's a chill guy. I know some people think that he's a spoiled rich kid, which he is, but so is Ilia Topuria. There's a couple spoiled rich kids in the UFC. Let's not hold that against them. But Arman is just one of those guys, like, the effort he puts into building that physique, the effort he puts into learning such dynamic strikes that you wouldn't think would come from a guy who's that built. Those axe kicks, the way he throws kicks is absolutely gorgeous. The flexibility he possesses, all of the skills, the wrestling, the way he was able to come in, his first fight in the UFC, short notice against Islam Makhachev, out-wrestle him in the first round, wrestle him pretty equally in the second, and then in the third, Islam started to take over, but to push Islam to a close decision like that in your first fight at, I think he was like 22, 21 years old. I've been so impressed by Arman his whole career. I've been saying for years this guy's going to be a champ. I've always wanted him to fight Islam Makhachev. I thought he was kind of like his kryptonite. He's 28 years old. Islam's 33. They're both in their prime. It's a perfect time to make this fight. It sucks that he had to drop out with an injury, at the back injury. Some people are saying it's because he was doing those spider walks with Nina on his neck, but maybe. I don't know. I don't know what caused the injury. I don't want to speculate, but Arman's one of those guys, man. Also him, having played hockey for 10 years. I'm somebody who played hockey for 15 years. So we both shared that kind of dream of wanting to be a professional hockey player and wanting to be a professional MMA fighter. So I relate to him on that level. He's also Christian, I believe. So yeah, there's just a lot of reasons why I wanted to cheer for Arman in that fight. Even though Islam Makhachev is one of my favorite fighters of all time, I was going to be rooting for Arman. I wanted to root for him. Maybe he gets the win. Maybe they do a trilogy, and it's one of the greatest trilogies of all time at lightweight. I was so excited for that fight, and it sucks it dropped out. I know Dana White said in the post-fight interview that Arman is not getting the rematch. He's going to have to work his way back to the title. I think that's a huge misstep. I don't think you can slap a guy on the wrist for getting injured. I don't think you punish a guy for that. I think you give him his shot back and you rebook that fight as soon as possible. Islam took no damage. He can literally fight in a month. I know he's got Ramadan coming up, so it's probably going to happen after that. But I think if he fights Arman, sometime in the spring, maybe before summer, maybe Islam can get a third, possibly a fourth fight in 2025. Probably not. It'll probably be 3. But I think if he gets 3 fights, having this performance already in January against Renato Moicano, slicing through him like butter, if he fights Arman and then maybe somebody else at the end of the year, we could be looking at Islam Makhachev already as our fighter of the year. So I hope he has a fantastic year. I hope that fight gets rebooked. I hope Dana doesn't make Arman fight back to the title again. I think he's done enough. I think we all want to see that fight. So don't punish Arman for getting injured. I know it sucks when people get injured last minute, but that's the fight I want to see next. Now, for Merab, I'd like to see Petr Yan. I want to see that fight ran back, even though it wasn't close the first time. I just want to see Petr Yan with the belt again because he was robbed of his belt with the Aljo fight and then the Aljo rematch, which he won, but then the judges screwed him over on it, and then he fought Sean O'Malley, and he won that fight, and then the judges screwed him over on that one, and then he fought Merab, and he lost that one. The judges didn't screw him over on that one. Definitely lost against Merab, but Petr Yan's one of those guys who I think he won the belt at like 28-29, and his losses were kind of BS, and I always thought, like, this guy should be having the belt and defending it. This should be like our next bantamweight GOAT. I am such a fan of Petr Yan. I hope he finds a way to get his wrestling better. Maybe he should go train with the Dagestanis, and I hope he can beat Merab. Again, I don't want to hate on Merab. I really like Merab, especially after this performance. I'm actually a big fan of him. But Petr Yan and Umar are just far and away my favorite bantamweights. So I'd love to see those two guys fight too. Umar versus Petr Yan would be a fantastic fight. But I think next for Umar, I would like to see him fight probably Figgy. I know a lot of people are calling for Sean O'Malley now, but I want to see Sean O'Malley and Corey Sandhagen. The two 5'11 strikers, I want to see them battle it out. That's the fight I want. I've been wanting it for years. I'd rather see Figgy fight Umar because Figgy's one of those guys who always needs to be in the top 5. You can't drop him down to the top 10, top 15. He's going to slaughter those guys. So he needs to stay in the top 5, and I think that's a fight that he could actually win. Even though I'm a big Umar fan, there's something about Figgy on the ground. There's something about the power that he has in his hands. I think he possibly could beat Umar. So I think that's a good fight. I think that's a great fight to have Umar come back to. If Umar beats Figgy, he beats a former world champion, so that could probably get him right back to the belt. And that's what I would do matchmakers-wise. But Let me know what you guys think down in the description, or down in the comments, not the description. Let me know down in the comments. Who do you guys want to see all these guys fight next? Don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends. It helps boost this channel and the algorithm. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, it means the world to me. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.